Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Bipolar Lines, the podcast where two spouses talk about loving someone with bipolar disorder. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Laura, and we're here to talk to you today about how we cope as loved ones to someone in an active bipolar episode.
Yes, and that episode could be mania or depression,
Yes,
and both of us have different experiences, and I'm sure we have different coping skills. Some of them could be the same. I guess we'll find
absolutely.
out.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, Laura, how do you cope with a manic episode in the beginning?
Yes, this is something that people always ask me on my TikTok, very common DM that I get. And yes, I think we start with mania just because I have more experience with, Cody, my husband, who has bipolar disorder, and his manic episodes. So the first thing I tell people that I do is I always get a therapist, and they're easier to get now. Everyone's always like, oh, I don't have the money or I don't have the time to go in. But I mean, I found mine through something called Sondermind, and this is not an ad for Sondermind. I don't get paid anything for this. But it was just an online way to find a therapist, and that's how I did it. So that's my number one thing. Have you ever had a therapist during episodes, Brooke?
I keep a therapist. Yeah.
Okay,
I've
yeah.
had one since 2020, 2021. I think so. I think it's been 2021. But yeah, I see her. I used to see her weekly. Now I see her every other week.
Yes.
So
Yes, I
yes,
still have mine too from his last one, which ended in May of 2023. I think so. Yeah.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, last year. So anyway, I still have it. And so I really recommend it. Why do you think a therapist helps you, Brooke, through this? Why is that important?
I think the therapy side of it is, well, there's lots of reasons that they're helpful, but out of the gate, separating the person from the illness, keeping your emotions in check, while also validating those feelings and emotions in a safe space. So I
Yes.
can I can tell my therapist, my husband is being a son, but I know it's not my husband, it's the illness.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to come back from that conversation on me. Like, I can't believe you called me names or whatever the case may be. He's not going to hear that. It's safe for me to just let those out and just express them in a safe place.
Yes, same. And I think a big thing that happens to a lot of us is that your initial inclination is we do need someone to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and we go to family, and then family feels like you're being mistreated, and their first inclination is to jump to your defense, or a lot of times might even tell you to leave, or you
Yep.
shouldn't have to deal with this, or you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do this. And I think it all comes out of a place of love, and I know people mean well, but that's not helpful.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. And I'll throw it back to the interview that I did with my friend Ashley, our friend Ashley. And that's one thing that we talked about in that space was like, I know you think it's helpful, and the you in this situation is family or friends. Like, you think you're empowering me to gain my confidence back and leave, and that's supposed to be helpful. But in fact, it's absolutely opposite. It is so draining to hear that and have to defend it while you're in a space where you don't want to defend. You just want to exist and vent and be and get
Yes.
comfort. And
Yes.
now you have to defend your person, your relationship with your person, because they're in an active episode. And I just want to be like, do you not see what's happening? Do you not? Okay, you don't see what's happening. Okay,
No,
cool.
no, and I think a lot of times they assume that that must be what my relationship always is like, and then it just happened to bubble to the surface, and they are just finding out, and that's not the case at all.
No.
So, yes, therapist, highly recommend it. The other reason I've had therapists in the past. Therapists have helped me set individual boundaries. Our last podcast was on boundaries, and boundaries were very confusing to me. I mean, I really needed help learning how to set them. And so initially, a therapist was really helpful in just giving me suggestions and ideas on how to set boundaries, but then also coming back each week the strength to keep them, because that's
Yes.
really the key, is
Mm-hmm.
the keeping of the boundary and following through with it. So a
Yep.
therapist was instrumental, absolutely, for helping me with that.
I think that's fantastic, which spawned a thought. Actually, it was 2 weeks ago during my therapy session. She said, "Do you know the first thing you said to me during our first session that has stuck out to me? Like, I can never forget it." And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what did I
Oh
say?
man, what's coming?
Oh crap, what did I say? And she goes, you looked at me and you said, I want you to hold me accountable. I need someone to hold me accountable for making myself a priority and for keeping my promises to myself. Right. I was like, oh, I do remember that. And she was like, well, that's not what I was talking about. I was like, oh. She said, you looked at me and said, I do not want you to tell me to leave my husband ever.
Mm-hmm.
If that comes out of your mouth, this agreement with us has to end, because
Yep.
I'm not looking for a therapist to tell me to leave my marriage. I am looking for a therapist to tell me how I can become a less stressed, better version of me and incorporate that into my marriage. She said, I remember I had this look like, and I, like, in her mind, she was like, I would never tell you to leave. And I was like, well, I said,
Yeah.
I was looking for a therapist that has experience talking with patients, people, clients with bipolar disorder diagnoses, so complex mental health, mental illnesses. And I was
Yep.
like, and that was intentional because I've had a life coach before. I've had another therapist, and their response to me is a lot of like shock face when I'm talking about life. And I'm like, that's not helpful.
No.
So I didn't give her any other detail other than that. And she brought that up 2 weeks ago, and she was like, I want you to know that I get why you told me that. And I've understood that for a while. We just haven't had a chance to talk about it. But also, it wasn't one of those situations where I could just be like, oh, by the way, you told me never to tell you to leave your husband. And now, like, I get it. I get it. Because that just sounds rude. And I was like, no, I get it. So I say all that to say, like, that was a boundary I had in place with my therapist. And I encourage everyone to also look at those boundaries when you are looking for a therapist, because it has to be one that works for you. It's not just a therapist to just get you through it. They have to work for you and in ways that are helpful for you. And if we are so overwhelmed and disappointed and tired of hearing, you need to leave your husband, or you need to leave your person, or you don't deserve this. Like, imagine also hearing that from the person you are seeking help from.
Right.
It doesn't go well.
Exactly.
Doesn't go well.
No, and I think there's a distinction to be made. Sometimes I might need to physically leave the premise, or he needs to physically leave the premise, but like you said, it's do not tell me, please do not tell me. It's for wait, like to like to leave my marriage. So
Yeah,
those two
to leave
things
my
in my
marriage.
mind are different. Like
Yes.
you can tell me, you can give me advice like I don't think this is a safe situation, or something like that. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure we delineated that.
No, that's a great point. Don't tell me to divorce my husband. Is kind of
Yeah.
what I was getting
Yes,
at. But yeah,
exactly. So
leave the marriage. Yeah, great point.
yeah.
Great point.
So other things I do, I think that I try to compartmentalize as much, and I think a lot of people have an easier time with this than others. Um, but I definitely will listen to, I will fill my ears with like positive, motivational YouTube videos, or the like a happiness podcast, or even just music. I remember blasting one day in my ear pods the whole day when he was just manic and nonstop talking. It was Every Storm Runs Out of Rain. It's a country song. And I was like, as silly as it sounds, I just kept it in my ears on repeat. Like, this isn't going to last forever.
The storm will eventually run out of rain.
Yeah.
Eventually
Yeah.
it will. Yeah.
Eventually it will. I mean, not that day, but
Right.
things like that really do help me. Do you find yourself doing anything like that?
So I, fellow ADHDer here,
Yeah.
if I listen to music that I truly enjoy, I'm not going to get anything done.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I just, all of a sudden, I'm in a different atmosphere, stratosphere, whatever you call it. So that doesn't work for me. But I do listen to other podcasts, and I have always hated this phrase, but I can't think of another way to say it, which is a true crime podcast fan.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not a fan of crime, but I am a fan of intaking and learning about it. So I will listen to podcasts, or I will listen to audiobooks. So like I'll be at
Okay.
work listening to audiobooks. And for whatever reason, I still don't understand it, but I cannot listen to music and like participate in life and be a contributory like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I will keep myself busy listening to books and like said podcast. There's nothing specific I've found like They don't have to be uppity. Again, I'm listening to true crime, so it's not happiness for me. I think it's
Mhm.
just to keep my mind busy and
Mhm.
focused and
Right.
learning on something. That is what
Yeah.
that's what typically works for me. Um,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
the,
Brains are different, right?
yeah, oh, for sure. And if I can get off on a tangent of hyperfixating on something, it takes a lot to grab myself and, pull away from that. So I try really hard not to do that, and I take my medicine, right? Like try to help me, right?
Mhm.
The other thing that I know that I do, I don't know if you want to call this healthy, unhealthy, or just is like my brain feels less chaotic when I'm in clean, non-cluttered environments. So I clean. When I get home, I am cleaning like a mad woman. I justify it in my brain that like when he comes out of it, we don't have to worry about, spending all this time cleaning the house. That's a trauma response. And I know this because there have been many a times where, you're so preoccupied with your person in the episode that there's nothing you can get done around the house. And it just becomes a disaster.
Oh, in my case, he suddenly becomes OCD and is the cleanest person on the planet.
Oh,
So it
wow.
is a obsession, and like having all of us clean, everything needs to be neat and almost perfect to an obsessive level. It's intense. It's very difficult.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I wouldn't call him a dirty person, but he's definitely like his normal baseline person is just pick up after yourself, not overly clean, not overly dirty.
Sure.
So when he is in a manic episode and it's like everything is out of place, he notices every little nuance. And yeah, so cleaning would
Hmm.
not work for me.
No, that would definitely not work for you. If you're like, no, I'm being forced to do this. Dang it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember him cleaning out our coat closet one night at 10 p.m. And he was like, "What do you want to do with this? Do you want this or do you want this? Do you want this or do you want?" I'm like, "I am not." Like, I had to set a boundary. I was like, "I am not cleaning at 10 p.m. at night just because you have decided we're cleaning the coat closet." And I had to keep saying it because then he kept trying. I'm like, "So again, I am not cleaning the coat closet at 10 o'clock at night. You can keep trying."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's funny.
I
So
know.
interesting how that
It
works.
is.
I don't want anyone to clean with me when I'm cleaning like that. Don't
Right. You
don't
want it
mess it
like
up.
your way. It's
Yeah.
like your kind of independent
Hmm.
thing.
If
Yeah.
they do, I'm like, I'm just gonna go back and do it again. So can you just not? Isn't there a good movie you could go watch? But that is just my way of like also releasing any stress or pent up energy.
Yeah.
It becomes therapeutic in that moment for me. It's not that I enjoy it on that level because I don't, but it is like, I don't know. It's kind of freeing at the same time. Now, if I'm mad and I'm cleaning, I'm mad and I'm cleaning, right?
Yeah.
Two very different things.
The other thing I do too is I journal. So
Mm,
I definitely it's interesting to go back because I keep all my notebooks and just see what I wrote, and it'll be feelings that I don't have for Cody, but they're feelings I have for bipolar. So like we talked about before in one podcast, separating the person from the illness. And so yeah, I mean there's some pretty there's some pretty crazy stuff in those journals, but
mm,
definitely journaling helps me too.
hmm. Journal.
Yeah.
Do you use like a specific like prompt, or do you just dear diary kind of just going with it?
Yeah, just kind of like going with it or just what I'm feeling and just expressing it into the journal. Similarly, like probably even with more force and veracity than I would a therapist, right? Because I'm just saying whatever feelings are coming out of me at
No
that
filter.
time. No filter, exactly. An unfiltered, just, oh, like what I'm dealing with right now.
Mm,
Yeah, it'll be like that. And yeah, there are times though that like I don't know even where I picked this up, but there was this recommendation to do like a gratitude journal. And so you would write down 3 things you're grateful for because it reframes your brain from just focusing on what is going wrong in your life to really trying to have your brain focus on there were good things that happened in your day, even if it
Mm-hmm.
was, the sun came out, or
Right, right.
I mean you could start really small, like
I
I'm
had clean
grateful.
socks in my
Yes,
drawer, right?
exactly. Yes, it doesn't have to be some like, oh, we went on vacation to Florida. No, that's not going to be happening. I mean, maybe if he's manic, but but like it could just be small things, and it does
Sure.
kind of train your brain to just look for the good in some days. So, I mean, I'm not going
Yeah,
to lie, it is hard. It is
yeah.
really, really hard. So, regardless of whether I mean, all these strategies are just coping mechanisms, but coping is the key word because it's
Mm-hmm.
not like I ever am in a state of homeostasis when he's manic. Never.
Yeah.
Absolutely never. There's always a piece of me that is on edge. I have anxiety. I have hypervigilance. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I totally feel that. It's not easy for sure. Cody's manic episodes, they can last a long time.
Yeah, so in his case, and Brooke and I have talked about how this is different, it's always once he's there, we don't come to a crash. Like there's very rarely a rapid cycling situation going on, or even just a small little mini manic episode. Like when he's gone, he's gone. So they, at the least last 4 weeks, and at the most last up to 3 months. So it is it is
It's a
hell
long
on
time.
earth. It is
Yeah,
hell on earth when he's manic, truly.
for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I don't want to minimize that. Oh, listen to happy podcasts, journal, and be grateful, and that's going to solve all your problems. No, it's still
No.
really hard.
Yeah, and those are just not going to solve anybody's problems. Those are just going to help you get through your day, right? Um,
Yes.
I've also found with Jeremy's manic episodes, which they've lasted, 4 to 7 days. He will tell you if you ask him, I was manic an entire summer. I think he was rapid cycling. He wasn't fully manic the whole 3 months of summer back in 2019. But anyway, what I've noticed with myself is I will try to keep my day as normal as it possibly can be
Mm-hmm.
from before the
Totally.
episode started to during the episode.
Yeah.
And I think that's important if your person, while they're in the active episode, if they're also at home or around you. If we can maintain a sense of normalcy and not match their energy, I've found that's incredibly helpful. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
feeding or fueling the illness. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. It reminds me of our podcast where we talked about not getting into a bipolar conversation
Yep.
because that is only going to make it worse. So, yeah, really, like you said, focusing on yourself. And it reminds me of that phrase. I think it's an Al Anon phrase, not that I've gone, but I read a lot up on it because someone recommended it because it's similar to having a spouse who's in active addiction, like when they're
Mm-hmm.
manic. And so the line that they say is nothing changes if nothing changes, which means one thing can change, and that can be you changing
Mm-hmm.
your reaction to the manic episode, you not getting on what we call the bipolar roller coaster, right? It's so easy for us to hop on board and go start
Mm-hmm.
flying with them. And
Yep.
that is not helpful. So
Yep.
learning how to remove yourself from the roller coaster, being an observer of the roller coaster, but not riding it with them is
Yes.
really helpful.
Very, very true. The easiest way for me to jump on that roller coaster with him, with Jeremy in my situation, is when I feel like I need to defend myself. The
Mm-hmm.
second that the illness is calling me names or saying
Mm-hmm.
terrible, hurtful, awful things, and that second that I feel like I need to defend myself, that's when I'm jumping on that roller coaster with him. And that's when you need to not jump on the roller coaster. That's when you turn around, you find something to do, or you use the mantra, like we've said, like, if you still feel the same way in a week or 2 weeks or 3 months, whatever it is, then we can have this conversation.
I
Go
love that
ahead.
you brought that up because people do ask me that. They're like, does he call you names? Does he say the most horrible things? Does he threaten divorce? Yeah, the illness does all of that.
All of it.
And he would never say the things that he says to me in manic episodes.
Mm-hmm.
He never has over 20 years I've known him. So I know it truly is the illness speaking to me now. I think that can be really hard when you first are getting to know someone or you first experience this because you are so confused why this amazing person is now saying all these horrible things to you.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me to, well, how do you deal with the hurt? And I saw this creator once who was bipolar, and he was like, I think there's only a certain personality that can honestly be in a relationship with us. And I don't know if I agree with that or not. However, I do know that I'm a person that has pretty thick skin. So I don't just fall apart and get my feelings hurt all the time. And I do feel like some people do have that personality type. And if you
Sure.
do, this is going to be really rough.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And I think we've
Mhm.
talked about that before. I don't want to put that out there until we do more research, but we've kind of talked about like there are certain things about us and other spouses, female spouses, that we found that we could check some boxes to.
Mhm.
And thick skin is one of them. And there's more. But again, that's just our conversation. So I don't want to put this out there like fact, but I do think that there are certain personality types or certain characteristics that the spouse, the loved one, needs to have to be able to maintain that relationship. You can get married and it lasts however long it lasts, because if you're not able to separate the person from the illness,
Mhm.
I can't
You're
say that it's
gonna
going to be
no.
successful.
No, because you're going to keep taking it personally. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I take it personally even when I know he's manic. It's hard not to. We're
Yeah,
human, but
we're
I
human.
take it personally with my emotions sometimes. But cerebrally, I can be like, bipolar is such an a-hole. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah,
And I can intellectualize that that's not him really talking to me.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is, does Jeremy apologize for the things he said to you when he's out of an episode?
Um, I think, I mean, he would if I asked him to.
Yeah.
But I've learned with him specifically, we've learned together that there are three specific primary emotions that he feels. When he feels those hard, he will spiral into a depressive episode
Mm-hmm.
really fast.
Yeah.
So shame is one of those.
Mhm.
Guilt is the second
Mhm.
one. And those two are going to come hand in hand with an apology from him when he was in a manic
Right.
episode.
Mhm.
So I looked for that apology for years and I've stopped
Yeah.
because I realized like I don't need to hear an apology from him to heal or to separate from what happened. So the way I look at it is what happens in that span of the manic episode is what happens. I've already like put him in another box in my brain. Like
Yeah.
I'm not married to this person. This person is the illness. And I kind of truly like put a shield, like a shield bubble over
Mhm.
my entire body, my entire being while he's in an active episode, and I go on with my life. Now, obviously, there are certain things that he will say that'll really piss me off, but it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, well, it's a good try. In my mind, I'm like, ooh, buddy, you were so close. You were so close. It kind of turns into this little like not a game, but it is kind of like a game for me. Like I'm laughing or I'm not, but I'm like, don't laugh, you're gonna make it worse. So that kind of works for me. Because the opposite is if I try to get an apology for something that number one, he doesn't fully remember because
Mhm.
he never fully remembers. He may remember uh, surface level conversations. Like, I know I called you and I was irate about something,
Yeah.
but that's all he'll remember.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ask him to apologize for something that he doesn't even remember doing, but also because I know he will spiral.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Without that, I'm sure I would look for an apology.
Yeah, I think a lot of spouses are looking for an apology, and especially when they're manic, you're not going to get one within a manic episode. So
No.
please don't do that.
Mm-mm.
It's
Do
like,
not engage.
do not engage. And I know you're hurt and I know it's hard. But it's not gonna go anywhere because their frontal lobe is hijacked. Their
Yep.
frontal lobe is hijacked. You're not, I remember early on just learning from other people, you're attempting to have a rational conversation with someone who is not capable of rational thought.
Mm-hmm.
So why are then you trying to have a rational conversation when they're not even capable of rational thought? Like then
Mm-hmm.
who is irrational? Truly, it's you. Yeah, wanting to get that apology.
Yep.
Exactly. So I do think that Cody, I'm glad you brought that up because again, there's just differences in the same disorder. Because Cody's not prone to depression, he also, I would argue, I'm not sure I've ever seen him embarrassed.
Oh,
So the shame piece, I don't know. Like he does feel shame when he hurts me and he will apologize when he fully comes to. And he does remember everything. It is
mm,
not surface level. He remembers everything. And I can see the torment like when it's coming back to him like I just you can tell and then oh god Laura you didn't deserve that I'm so sorry I'm so sorry I'm so sorry you didn't deserve that and again I don't think I would need that apology anyways because his actions are different when he's manic and not so I really
yeah,
know who the real person is. He does feel shame with people he truly loved that he treated badly. But like, let's say I would feel shame if I even treated someone I didn't know on the street
sure,
poorly. But
sure.
no, that's not going to phase him.
Yeah.
He's not going to feel ashamed about that.
He's like, "Meh."
And I think that probably is, regardless of what people think about that, I think that contributes to the fact that he doesn't have these major depressive episodes because it is common to have the mania and then crash into depression
Hmm.
from just stories that I'm aware of and then just even the reading that I've done on bipolar. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely very common. And I think, like you mentioned, so Cody remembers everything, and you can see the torment on his face. You can
mhm,
see the
mhm,
sadness, the pain.
mhm. And the
What,
shock,
and yeah,
the like disbelief, like, mhm.
yeah. And for me, it's more of this like, oh my God, it's shock too. Like I didn't realize that's what I did, and it's just awful. And
Yeah,
I've realized over time that like it's not helpful unless
yeah,
it's something that he needs to know.
yeah,
It's not relevant. But I think that becomes problematic when you include other people into that conversation or other
sure.
people are involved in things that happen
Yes,
during an episode. That
yes.
makes it difficult.
Yeah, this last one of Cody and I's, I had to, get a couples counselor. I've talked about this before, but just in terms of coping, because though I normally don't need an apology, I needed him to know what happened this episode and make sure that we were going through all of the details because it involved just, children, custody, just things like that. And I wanted to, that's something we had to address because
Sure.
that included my kids. So
Yeah.
that was, yeah, I had to do it then, but
Sure.
yeah.
Well, and also just like if something happens where you're at a family function or you're at a friend's house and things just go
Yeah.
sideways, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
now you feel a little uneasy about the situation because I'm not trying to get an apology for him. I used to, mind you.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. I used to ask for those conversations to happen.
Mhm.
But after recognizing the fallout, I'm like, okay, that's not worth it. I don't need
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
don't need
That
it.
fallout for you is severe. I mean, I think we should probably talk about that with the depression now. Coping through depression is different because Cody's only had one major one, but it lasted 9 months, and it was this apathetic depression that I think was caused by just the medication that he had.
Mm,
But I remember, like, Cody is, he's usually lives on the hypomanic side of life. He's a very lovey, touchy feely, outgoing, personable, life of the party, fun, doesn't get embarrassed. Like I can hide behind him. I love doing that and having him just, and we have so much fun that seeing him, this listless vessel that almost didn't even have peripheral vision, just staring in front of himself, going through the motions of the day, and then not being lovey, not being touchy feely. I mean, it was like a cardboard cutout. I lived with a cardboard cutout for 9 months, and that broke my heart. That broke my
mm,
heart. Like, it was very isolating. I felt very, very lonely.
yeah,
Mhm.
because also knowing what we know about the illness and knowing what we know about depression, like we understand this is what a depressive episode looks like. Like I can't
Mhm.
expect him to show up for me right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it continues on and on and on, that's no dig. That just is. That's just how it goes.
Mhm. It
And it
is.
is incredibly lonely. Like
Mhm.
the listless vessel, that's a phenomenal description because I can tell you, or not me, Jeremy can tell you, like he can tell you where every chip, scratch, bump, discoloration on his chest of drawers is because it sits to the left of our bed. And he would just sit there and stare at this chest
Oh,
of drawers,
gosh.
right, for
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you okay? And he'd be like, yeah. And just, very monotone, just very spaced out, just staring at this chest of drawers for literally
Yeah.
hours. Now,
Yeah.
I cannot, and I am lucky to be able to say this, I cannot imagine myself sitting there for hours on end staring at a chest of drawers because I didn't have the ability to get up.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
experienced depression on a not that low by any stretch of the imagination, where I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't finding joy in things, and I didn't want to leave the house other than to go to
Mm-hmm.
work. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, I don't want to participate in anything. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to be left alone, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's scary. It's a lot because, as you mentioned, there's never a feeling of like, you don't get comfortable when they're in an active episode.
Mm-mm.
And with depression, he's more of a risk to himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always like watching for something to change.
Yeah, so you have that hypervigilance in the depressive episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. With mania too, but this on a more,
intense level.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, of course, because we're talking about, I mean, with mania, it's life and death too, because they
Mm-hmm.
could do something stupid and
Oh,
end
for
up,
sure.
but with depression, I could imagine how it hits different there. Yeah.
Sure. With mania, he could drink himself to death. He
Right.
could move into alcohol poisoning, hit his head, and then that's the end, right? Like,
Cody's been walking in the middle of a highway, Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's that, but just knowing that that does live there, but knowing that, I mean, I don't know, with him and you watching like for signs of like, oh gosh, is this gonna, because you
yeah.
guys have had attempts that you've been open about,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which is really scary.
Absolutely.
How do you
And
cope with those, Brooke? Like, what do
which
you
part?
do? I know,
During
do you
them,
feel
after
like
them?
you're coping? Yeah, probably during, like when you're in
Okay.
that hyper vigilant stage, are you able to cope, or is it mostly just like, I don't know, like kind of like I get asked by my therapist all the time, "What are you doing to take care of you?" I'm like, "I'm not, and I
No.
can't. I
Mm-mm.
cannot right now." Do you feel that way, or do you
Oh
find
yeah,
moments?
1000%.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have the space to take care of me, to do any sort of like extra self-care when he's in an
Right,
episode. Like, you
right,
can forget
right,
it. I'm doing
right.
good to get through the day and make sure the kids are good, and he's safe, and I go to work and I'm not getting fired from my job,
Yeah.
and my car has gas to go home. Like, I'm just doing my best to exist
Mhm.
every day, for sure. And after his last attempt, that was hard because uh he was in the hospital. He
Mhm.
was sent by Lifestar to a hospital that's like an hour away from where we currently live, and I was faced with like, oh god, like, here I am, here are my kids, like, I don't know if he's gonna make it. He's on life support, and now I need to like, now I have to take care of them and me in a different space, right?
Mhm.
Not just like he's in bed, he's in a different bed.
Yeah, exactly.
And then try to keep things age appropriate, but also in the last goodness, with the last attempt, like, I had to prepare them for the worst.
Mhm.
So I think I spent time trying to prepare them. I wasn't spending any time preparing me because
Mhm.
I was spending time preparing them, right?
Yeah.
And just trying to, I was
You
working in the hospital. That's a
You
whole
were
other
updating
ballgame.
on your TikTok during one of
Yes.
these attempts. Do you feel like that helped you, the community that was around you rallying, or was it more that was more just also a survival tool?
It was helpful. And Ashley, my friend I referred to her earlier, she helped a lot with that. She was posting um and engaging with people and helping out, which was great. I felt it was incredibly helpful to share real time what it looks like, not only for anybody that was watching, but for Jeremy. And here's why.
Mhm.
He has always told me that if he died, you all would be sad for a little while, but then you'd be okay.
Ugh.
Okay. That is what he truly believed.
No.
And it doesn't matter like how often I mean, it doesn't matter. You couldn't
Right.
convince him otherwise.
Oh gosh.
So I wanted him to be able to see, no, that's not what that looks like. Like, you
Mm-mm.
may think that we're okay, but
Mhm.
this is the reality. This is what we
Mhm.
had to go through.
Yeah.
And it's not to do anything other than to let him actually see, like, we thought you were not going to make it. Like, we were
Mhm.
told if you make it to the next hospital, it'll be a miracle.
Mhm.
And you made it there.
Yeah, seriously.
So this is what it looks like. And I wanted him to see that so he could change his mindset. He could actually see it. Because once you're off this planet, you're no longer walking the earth. You don't know. You don't get
Yeah.
to find out the other side. In this situation, like, he got to see it and realize that, oh, my belief was wrong.
Yes.
You
Yes,
weren't
and I
just
think
sad.
that is common in depression, isn't it? Where
Hmm.
whether it's bipolar depression or not, that people who have attempts or sadly completed it get in their head that life would be better off without them. Like the
Yep.
world would be better off without them because they're too much of a burden, or they might be ruminating on what they've done or not
Yep.
done, or what their illness has caused other people. And so
Hmm.
I think that is a real thing, right?
One
That they
thousand
get in their
percent. Yeah.
head. Hmm.
1000%. And I would go to bat and debate anyone who would tell me that suicide is selfish in this space, because I promise you
Right,
that is not
100%. Agreed. Yes.
selfish.
Yes, yes,
If
yes.
if if it was a rational person that was making logical decisions, like, maybe the conversation's different. But in this space, like, no, they're not in their right mind. They're not thinking clearly. They are consumed by all the wrongs that they've done in
Yeah,
life, right?
exactly,
all
exactly.
all the crap that they wish they could take back, and the hurts that they've
Mhm.
caused. And they're
Mhm.
like, she wouldn't have to come home. In my situation, Jeremy would be like, you wouldn't have to come home and see me laying in this bed every day and be not able to, like, do anything for you. I can't even take a shower. It's been 9 days.
Mm.
I haven't brushed my
Yeah.
teeth in 13 days, and it sticks, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mm-mm.
So what about afterward then? Like, do you feel like after kind of the depressive episode is up, like life is normal? Do you have any coping strategies you have to use during normal everyday life?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I've been able to do with my current job, um, not without nosy Nancy's asking questions, but that's a whole other ballgame, is I work from home when he is in a state where I'm not sure it's safe for him to be home alone. I'll work
Mhm.
from home. So that helps me keep an eye on things with him. I think I mentioned last episode that I also take back managing his medications. So
Mhm.
that risk is eliminated, right? And then as he's moving out of the episode, I will slowly reintegrate him giving like, I just gave him his medication back today.
Mhm.
He's
That's
been
great though. Yay.
3 weeks out, 3 weeks out. I think so, which is
Yeah.
huge because usually it
Yeah, that
takes me a
is
heck of a lot
huge.
longer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, usually I'm like 3 months down the road going, nope, not ready. Nope, not
Yeah,
ready.
yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. You
So
know,
yeah.
that does remind me that I orchestrated my life as it currently sits because of Cody's illness. And people don't realize that. And I didn't realize that really to talk about it during this podcast until just now when you said that you'll work from home on certain days or not. I used to have a job working in the schools, and I'm at the mercy of that school day. And so I have to go in at a certain time. I have to leave at a certain time. There's no flexibility to work from home at all. And we have meetings in the job I do. I'm in special education. And so we would have meetings that last after school, and I'm at the mercy of however long that meeting would last. And so having a job like that, I either needed, really reliable childcare or Cody to be reliable. And starting in August of 2016, when he started having these episodes again, he was not reliable. He was forgetting to pick up the kids. He wasn't where he was supposed to be when he was supposed to be. I was a crazy person having other people watch my kids, shift them around. It was awful. And then 10 months later, it happened again. So we had it in August, and then 10 months later was in May. And May is like a really high time for these meetings and things. And I was like, this is not going to work. This is not sustainable. I can't have this type of job with him potentially having these episodes, God knows when, all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Anyway, I actually, now my current position, I'm a speech therapist. I'm in private practice now. And in private practice, I do have the option of telehealth, so I can work from home. All of my clients know that he's bipolar because he's
Mm-hmm.
let me and he's open with it. And so I have all the flexibility now to orchestrate my schedule in the event that that happens. And they all understand if I'm not making sessions, I'll just be like, I'm sorry, Cody's manic. Like, I have to cancel. Otherwise, if I didn't tell them that, they I have to have a reputation and rapport with
Sure.
families.
Sure.
And so if I'm just flaking out, like, oh, sorry, I have to cancel, or oh, last minute cancellation, I'm so sorry, family emergency, even that people do not necessarily understand until I was really open about saying, like, hey, he has bipolar, this is what's going on. And so that's been what's able to work for me. But yeah, I did that. In a way, it made me better in private practice. I'm definitely
Yeah.
happier. I don't think I
Sure.
would have ever done it had I not had some sort of catalyst like that. So that's another philosophy I have, actually. Sorry, I'm rambling, Brooke. I'm going to let you talk in a minute, but
No, you're
it's
good.
just
Keep
making
going.
me thinking of one thing after another, is that I'm really a believer of turning pain into a purpose. I don't want to just sit in pain and have it go nowhere. Like, so things that have pushed me to do the greatest things that I've done in life so far have been a direct result of some sort of catalyst that was so incredibly painful for me that then I used for good. And so, like this podcast, for
Yeah.
example, is exactly that. It's turning these, we're not sugarcoating it. This is so hard. It is so hard to deal with being the spouse of someone who has bipolar disorder. And that's nothing against Cody. I love that man to death. He is my twin flame 100% in this world. But
Twin
um,
flame. I love that.
yeah, but like that pain, those painful moments, I hope to turn into something good too. So having our TikToks, doing this podcast, giving back, because I want to see other people supported in the
Hmm.
ways that I was or wasn't, and I
Exactly.
think you feel the same. What would you say?
Absolutely. My therapist, when I told her about this podcast, she was like, "Oh my God, that is so perfect for you in so many ways." And I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
"What do you mean?" Because this is going to be hard, and it's weird talking to, but it was just me. It was just like me staring at me and the wall, going, "Oh God, okay." But anyway, she was like, "No, I don't think you realize, like." She was like, "You have educated me more about bipolar disorder than I would have ever known in my studies." And she's a licensed clinical psychologist
That
therapist.
is the same with my therapist.
And I was like, oh, I better have.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And she was like, "But what you don't see is that every time that you bounce off something that's happened, like you're explaining to me something that happened when he was in an episode, you tell me I'm not mad at him because that was the illness. Like you are informing me that like I can't be mad at him either because that
Mhm.
was the illness. That wasn't actually your husband. Like you separate those pretty easily. And I'm also like reminding myself at the same time." And she was like, "You do that so well." And she was like, "And what you don't see is like parts and pieces of you from when you got married to when before he was diagnosed are healing every time that you find clarity and use this pain for purpose. You find
Yeah, I
purpose in
love
your
that.
pain."
Yes.
And I was like, that's why it feels so good. Like that's why like
Totally.
helping others feels so good because I want to help
Totally.
others. I don't want them to feel how I did. You had a different level of support than I did with the NAMI
Yeah, I
support group and
did.
things. I was just out here winging it,
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
really amazing how you've come this far, not having the advice of others and just really figuring this out truly all on your own at the
Yeah.
beginning. I mean, yeah, I did have NAMI. I did have this discussion board group that had elders in it, veterans of people, even people with bipolar in it, giving me advice and good advice. Not,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Facebook groups, except for ours, we have not plugged our Facebook group. We should
Mm-mm.
do that. We
You
have a
should.
Facebook group. What's it called again, Brooke?
It is called Bipolar Lines Pod.
There we go. And that space is not going to be a negative Facebook
No,
group where we all just trash our spouses. And if it'll never turn into that because Brooke and I are in there.
no.
And that's not what we want. That's not the vibe we want. But unfortunately, I feel like that's what a lot of support groups are now, unfortunately, on Facebook. And I get why. You're usually looking for support when someone is actively in an episode, whether it be depression or mania, and you're stressed
Mm-hmm.
out and you're saying all the things and horrible things and you're venting basically to this group. And that's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely do that in our group too, but the responses back are not going to be vitriol. It's going to
Right.
be understanding, hey, your emotions are valid, but also you're engaging in a bipolar conversation. Here's how to stop that. You're not separating the person from their illness. Let's remind
Mm-hmm.
yourself about that. And we'll have
Mm-hmm.
these podcasts now that we can, in these episode topics, where we can, if someone is dealing with whatever we're talking about today or needs help with it, we'll have a whole podcast episode now to link in there for
Yep.
you guys. So
Yep.
that is what I want, and that is what I had in NAMI.
Yeah. And I love that. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think what helped me too is not having the support was number one. There weren't those groups here. I looked at NAMI, but there wasn't anything local, like anywhere even close to local here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, okay. But the way that my mind works, or my interest in psychology and why people do and say the things that they do and say, I think that really helped me to understand this illness and what am I going to say? How to narrow down like the other illnesses that I knew that he definitely did not have, and had a different scope, because my husband has bipolar disorder type 1, but he also has borderline personality disorder, ADHD, and OCD. So in the scope of life for him, like how he presented looked differently, but just understanding, like wanting to understand it and know it. And I don't know, I guess my brain processes it differently. Like it was easier for me to learn as much as I could and then make it make sense for him.
I'm smiling so big right now because, for one, I just connected a dot that is why you like true crime podcasts and videos, is because you're trying to figure out how their mind works and what is motivating them. I do not like true crime anything. I don't like watching anything like that. But I love watching things like The Bachelorette or like all these social experiments where I'm like, what would possess a person to go on a show like that? Or, like I want to see like the personality. And so I do the same thing. Like I don't watch for entertainment value. I do, but it's entertaining because I'm trying to figure out how these people's minds work and what makes them tick. And so that's so interesting that we both got there with very different interests. But that was absolutely too. I was like, bipolar disorder. I've never heard of that. I literally had never heard of this. I'd heard of schizophrenia. So I was like, okay, like, so he's schizophrenic. Like, I've never heard of this. So I went and bought like 3 books. I read Bipolar for Dummies. I read Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder. I was thirsty for knowledge, trying to figure out what this thing was he was diagnosed with. So that's
Same.
interesting. Yeah.
And I love those shows too, the Bachelorette and all those. I'm like, this is going to be fun. And Jeremy will be like, this is the slowest moving TV show ever. And I'm like, this? Are you kidding me? Like, so much is happening. And nothing is, it's the unspoken development that I love.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
so I think, maybe a coping strategy then that we kind of got to here, but we didn't talk about it, is educating yourself. That is a coping strategy, is learning what this illness is, because the more you understand it, the more you are going to be able to do the things that you and I are talking about, Brooke, separating the person from its illness, not engaging in a bipolar conversation, resisting the urge to defend yourself when you're getting verbally berated. Like all of those things you're going to understand because you educated yourself on what bipolar is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it can be, what's the word? Maybe it feels not enough when somebody asks. I just got this question on TikTok yesterday, like the video of me recording the onset of Jeremy moving into mania, which was a crazy thing to be able to capture, but we did.
That thing still gives me, like, when I watch that video, it still like triggers me.
I'm sure,
because it's so real. It's so what happens. Yes,
it is. It really is. So I got a question on there yesterday, which was like, okay, so what is the best thing to do? Leave them alone. And I want to reframe that for people. Leaving them, to say leave them alone feels like a parent-child relationship. It feels like you don't or shouldn't have to engage with your loved one. Like, don't do it, kind of thing. So in my mind, I'm like, what is best is that you don't engage with the illness. And I know that doesn't seem like enough, or maybe you're
Mhm.
looking for more. But the more, in my opinion, is the details of that. That's driven from your relationship with your person. So however engaging with your person looks like, that's the details. So from the get-go, I'm saying don't engage. Just do not engage with the illness. I'm still going to like, hey, I'm about to make dinner. Like I'm still going to talk.
Right.
I'm
Yeah, you
still
still
going
talk
to,
to them.
yeah, I'm still going to have, conversations with my kids, or I'm going to take a shower. Like I'm just not looking for him to do any sort of complex thinking, make any sort of connections, or think through things that would require remembering dates, times, or expectations. Right? I'm
Right.
laying nothing on the line
Right.
that he has to engage with that would require more than just acknowledgement of the conversation.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
all I'm doing.
Stress is a major trigger, and even though it might seem menial, something like, did you pick up the kids, is stressful because then they
Yep.
realize, oh my God, I forgot, like I got to go get the kids, and then their mind is already racing and spiraling. And no, I have to orchestrate it, like I said before, where it's as less responsibility as possible for him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's not leaving him alone.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I like how you reframed that. It really isn't that.
No, because you still have to engage with your person. Well, not have to, I shouldn't say that. But if you're married, you're in the same house, then your level of involvement and engagement is going to be much higher than if you are not living together, etc. Or if it's
Right.
a, parent child relationship.
Hmm.
In that space, like you don't have to have those conversations, and calling to check in on them to see how they're doing if you know they're in an active episode is probably not going to be helpful either, because then you are
Mm,
truly engaging with the illness by asking how they're doing.
I know.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're going to be the bad person,
Yeah.
and they're going to bring up something from like 15 years ago, and you're going to be like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
That one Friday night when I wanted to go, just don't do it. Just don't do
Don't
it.
do it. Don't
Yeah.
do it.
And just a public service announcement, because I think Laura and I have both been here. If you are the parent of an individual with this diagnosis, and your child is married, please hear me. We as the spouses are not going to lie to you about what is happening in an episode.
Right.
Please hear us for what we are not. We don't think that your son, your daughter are scum of the earth. We absolutely do not believe that.
No.
We want to tell you the truth because we need you to understand the depths of this illness and what is happening, so that you are also not surprised when something happens, something more happens. When you get a call from jail, for example, when you get a call from the cops, when you get a call or a Facebook message from this individual named April, I'm making this up, okay, that she's pregnant with your son's baby. Okay, whoa. I don't want you to be surprised that these things are happening, because yes, they can sound at the very beginning like, this is crap. You are lying. Like, what did she do to you? Like, I promise you, we are not lying to you.
We are not. And it is also not our fault. We are not making your son crazy. We are not causing them to be crazy. No matter what he's saying, he's probably telling and that's been my situation where Cody has probably told his
Mm-hmm.
parents that, and they just believe him
Mm-hmm.
because they have not educated themselves on a
Ding,
manic
ding, ding.
episode. It's that education piece again. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is so easy and it is so common, and I hear it over and over and over and over again from spouses on my TikTok, that the parents are blaming the spouse
Yep.
when it's the illness that is to blame. And even when Cody has come out of his episodes and he has explained to them, they just think now he's under my thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to tell them that because I made him or something. Instead of listening to him like, no, that was actually false. I was actually lying. I was actually sick. And I didn't mean those things that I said. They still, in my mind, do not believe him.
Yeah. Because the truth is, like, if you take all the chaos away from those conversations that are happening, and we just talk about the facts that he's spewing, which are lies, but from the parent side, like, what the facts that they're taking is, I don't like Laura. Laura is taking all of my money, whatever it is, right?
Whatever it is.
Laura is doing X, Y, Z. That's all they hear.
Yep.
And the other stuff is like so, what is the word? Outlandish at times that you're like, okay, yeah, right, whatever. But really what he's saying is Laura's mistreating him. Laura's doing blah, 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 blah. That's how it ultimately becomes our fault. And it doesn't matter like how we try to say, no, that's not the case. They're like, it's okay. We understand. Don't do that. Please, I'm begging you, don't do that. It is not our fault. We are not lying to you. We are not looking for attention. In fact, we don't even want to be having this conversation.
You know, what would be really great, Brooke, if one day all the family worked together to support the human that we know has been diagnosed and hospitalized for a very real, very textbook diagnosis. And that would be in the best benefit for the individual themselves if we could all work together and recognize what mania is, what it causes. And maybe we should get someone, who is a parent. I know a few on TikTok where, when you support the spouse, you are supporting your child. If you're supporting this, you are supporting maintaining the family unit instead of contributing to ripping it apart when you're not recognizing that it's the mania, that you're not talking to your son, you're talking to bipolar.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I love that PSA. Man, I could get fired up on that and do a whole nother podcast.
I think we should make an episode about this. I do.
I do too. I think we should. I think we have our next idea.
I do too. Coming soon to an ear near you. Yeah, no, totally agree. And I had a thought and it left me. Where'd it go? Oh, ADHD brain. Anyway, it'll be what it is. But yeah, I think we've talked a lot about coping skills, coping mechanisms. They're all going to be different based on who you are. And I guess one coping skill that we have kind of said, I just want to be clear, is like, give yourself grace.
Yeah.
What you knew 2 seconds ago is going to be different from what you know now, right? What you knew a month ago, a year ago, whatever, is different than what you know now. So give yourself grace and feel confidence in knowing that like the people that love you are going to tell you to take care of you. Well, you've got to slow down and take care of you. If that is not something that sits well with you, if you're frustrated and tired of hearing it, like feel confident in creating that vocal boundary with your family members or friends to say like, look, I know you mean well, but that is not helpful for me. What I would really appreciate is if you could do X, Y, Z. Say whatever it is. Like, it's okay to say that. Like when I stop creating these or having these healthy conversations, like that's when you should be worried about me. When I'm shutting down and not speaking to you all, answering text messages, what have you, like that's when you should be worried. Until then, like I'm not going to be able to respond immediately. I'm not going to always be able to answer the phone because I am trying to have conversations or I'm trying to, make life decisions and call hospitals or inpatient programs or whatever it is. And I don't have the time to hear about your day. That's not because I don't care or that I don't love you.
Right.
I just cannot take that on right now. And that's okay. Give yourself the space to know that you're not a bad person because you can't do those things.
Yep.
It's just part of the life that you live.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have that expectation if someone was actively in treatment for, something else. If your loved one was hospitalized for a car accident, your friend is not, or your mother or whoever is not going to be like, well, why aren't you caring about my day? Why aren't you listening to what's going on with me? It's just so different for some reason with mental health. But that's why we're doing this.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. All right. Is that your takeaway from today?
I think so.
Awesome. All right. Well, episodes are going to be dropping every other week on Wednesdays on pretty much all podcast platforms. Laura mentioned the Facebook group. It's Bipolar Alliance Pod. Check us out on there. If you have stuff you want to post, feel free. And if you are watching us, that means you are on our YouTube channel, which is brand new. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just posting videos and seeing what's happened. So hopefully, it'll evolve over time. But if you'd rather watch us, then you'll find us on there again at Bipolar Alliance Pod. You can find Laura on TikTok.
The BP Spouse.
Yes, and I'm at Break the Stigma. Thank you all for being here, for showing up for your person, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.